and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. Morocco is in the process of producing Africa's very first Mpox test as the outbreak continues across the continent. At the Moldiag Laboratory in Rabat, Director and Chief Scientific Officer Professor Abdulazim Mumnin says this is to reduce the continent's reliance on imported medical supplies and donations from Western nations. The Moroccan startup began developing tests after the World Health Organization declared the virus a global emergency in August. Africa's Center for Disease Control and Prevention has reported over 59,000 Mpox cases and 1,164 deaths in 20 countries this year. Well, after African countries struggled to get testing kits during the COVID-19 pandemic, officials vowed to make the continent less dependent on imported medical supplies.
Moldiag activity is mainly focused on the development and production of molecular diagnostic tests for several diseases, such as infectious diseases and cancer. Until now, we have 6 kits which have been developed, validated, and also authorized for the commercialization. One for breast cancer and leukemia, and the other one for infectious diseases such as COVID-19, hepatitis C, tuberculosis, and the last one is for Mpox. For the last one, we have started development following in response to what happened in Africa and the spreading of this disease, just because we want to be on time in order to give a possibility of diagnostic of this disease.
Nigeria has become the first country worldwide to introduce a groundbreaking 5-in-1 meningitis vaccine, Men5CV. The World Health Organization, which calls it a landmark public health achievement, says the vaccine has the potential to dramatically reduce the burden of meningitis in Nigeria and across sub-Saharan Africa. The WHO recommended vaccine offers protection against 5 major strains of meningococcal bacteria, A, C, W, Y, and X, marking a significant advancement in the fight against the deadly disease. Meningitis is an infection of the membranes surrounding the brain and spinal cord, causing inflammation. It has the potential to cause severe complications, including brain damage, hearing loss, and even death. According to the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 30,000 cases of meningitis with a fatality of 50% are reported every year. Joining us now for more on this is Dr. Stephen Noni, postdoctorate researcher at the Global Health and Infectious Diseases Control Institute, Nasarawa State University in Kefi. Thank you so much for your time, Doctor, on the program.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's begin with who will be eligible for this vaccine that we've seen Nigeria roll out, and what will be the mode of administration?
So the people that will be eligible are basically people within the age group of 1 to 29 years old. And that means that children are captured within this age group. Adolescents are also captured, as well as young adults within this age group. And the reason why it is this category of people that are being captured is because they are the most vulnerable and they are the ones at risk of this particular disease we're talking about.
Well, I noticed that meningitis B, is not included in Men5C. How will this affect the picture of meningitis in Nigeria? I'm asking, how it will impact Nigeria's share of those 30,000 cases.
So it's nothing to worry about, because the serogroup B of Neisseria meningitidis or meningitis is hasn't been responsible in any way for any epidemiological outbreak of meningitis in the past years. So there's really nothing to worry about. It's not so significant, or the contribution of this particular serogroup is so negligible. Although it casts a gap on comprehensive immunization, but it's nothing to worry about. And cascading backward a little, the question you asked is, what is the route of administration in the first question? And I think it's important to clearly state that the route of administration is intramuscular.
Well, can we talk about the financial implications of this vaccine at this time to the Nigerian government and also individuals and families, and also its sustainability in the national program on immunization?
So the financial implication of this to the Nigerian government is actually 0 naira. And that is because this vaccination program is captured as part of the expanded program on immunization for Gavi, an international NGO. That's the Vaccine Alliance. So there's nothing to bother about in terms of cost on the Nigerian government. When we're talking about cost here, please, it should be noted that we're talking about financial cost, as well as for individuals also. Individuals have nothing to worry about in terms of out-of-pocket payment for this particular vaccine. It's free, and there's no financial implication.
All right then, doctor, just before I let you go, kindly remind us, of the symptoms of this disease we're talking about, meningitis, and what will be the red flags to act on immediately? So
for the symptoms, we're talking about headache because it affects the central nervous system. So headache is a symptom. Stiff neck is a very predominant symptom of this particular disease that we're talking about. Fever also is a predominant symptom. And as it progresses, we can have photophobia and rashes and so on. But once you notice that you have fever and that your neck is stiff, it's time to call your doctor or time to consult your doctor.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Dr. Stephen Noni, postdoctorate researcher at the Global Health and Infectious Disease Control Institute, Nasarawa State University. Thank you for your time on Network Africa.
Thank you, ma'am. The pleasure is.
Well, the importance of access to health services for all Somalis came under the spotlight this week at an event in the Somali capital, Mogadishu, to mark the Universal Health Coverage Day. The gathering, held at the National Museum of Somalia, was jointly organized by the Ministry of Health and Human Services, WHO, and the UN Transitional Mission in Somalia, and also the Human Rights and Protection Group. And it's all to raise awareness on universal health coverage. Well, Somalia's health system faces numerous challenges, including conflicts, climate change, and inadequate funding. Communities in remote areas of the country suffer the most and often lack proper healthcare information. The Horn of Africa country currently ranks at the bottom of the Universal Health Coverage Index, indicating the lowest level of UHC globally.
From a right to health perspective, this is making sure that that health is accessible, available, and acceptable, and is of quality. So for us as human rights, one thing we're very interested about is that people can access information about health. So that's in their own languages, and you'll see about 8 languages represented here today, languages and dialects, as well as art. And the art is a fantastic way to also express messaging about healthcare in Somalia.
People in storm-ravaged Mayotte Island are imploring French President Emmanuel Macron to do more to help them, even as he toured the overseas territory where scores are feared dead in the rubble left by Cyclone Chido. In Pamanzi, an angry crowd booed and heckled at the president, asking for more aid to be delivered. Officials in France's poorest overseas territory have only been able to confirm 31 fatalities, now more than 5 days after cyclone. But some have said they fear thousands of people could have been killed, even as many areas remain inaccessible. Heavy rain in the capital, Mamoudzou, and other areas has worsened the plight of thousands of survivors whose shanty town dwellings were flattened. Macron's office says he would stay on the islands overnight and visit more neighborhoods. His government has been accused by opposition politicians of neglecting Mayotte, and several residents of impoverished areas said they had not received any help since the cyclone struck. In the meantime, residents of Mayotte territory queued for hours at petrol stations as fuel shortages compounded the island's struggles as the Cyclone Chido struck over the weekend. At a Daoudzi petrol station, people lined up with their cars and scooters from early morning. Police officers managed the crowds while firefighters were on ground waiting alongside civilians. Residents speak of waiting for hours since the midnight just to be able to get some liters of fuel. The fuel crisis adds to Mayotte's woes, with many areas still inaccessible and lacking clean water. According to one person, it's despair for those who have nothing left and nothing to eat, and there are also fears of petty theft. Away from Mayotte, the head of Madagascar Senate, Richard Ravalomanana, has met with Speaker of the Federation Council of Russia, Valentina Matvienko, in Moscow. Mr. Ravalomanana has expressed Madagascar's desire to bolster the fraternal relations between the two countries and also advance the development of both nations on a basis of equality and mutual benefit. Well, Moscow says it values Madagascar's commitment to enhancing mutual cooperation, adding that his visit will contribute to a better understanding of the processes taking place in Russia and also broaden the range of cooperation and relations between both countries. The two sides also discussed cooperation in the fields of education and youth exchanges. We continue with the crisis in Sudan. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is asking the UN Security Council for three things in dealing with the war in Sudan. UN senior humanitarian official Edem Wosonu presented the demands to the council, which includes the warring parties, the army and paramilitary RSF, should comply with international humanitarian law. The UNSC should use its influence to ensure all humanitarian relief routes are open and also for donors to provide $4.2 billion humanitarian need to support nearly 21 million people inside Sudan next year. Ms. Wosonu says the situation in the country is a crisis of staggering scale and cruelty, one that demands urgent attention. She delivered the statement on behalf of the UN Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, Tom Fletcher.
This is a crisis of staggering scale and cruelty, one that demands sustained and urgent attention. First, unequivocal demand that the parties must comply with international humanitarian law. The appalling civilian toll must end. Essential infrastructure and services must be spared, and sexual violence must be stopped. The recommendations in the Secretary General's October report on the protection of civilians in Sudan should be implemented in full, using your influence to ensure all humanitarian relief routes, road and air across conflict lines and borders are open. Bureaucratic impediments must be lifted, and permits and visas for incoming personnel issued swiftly and efficiently. Humanitarian personnel and their assets must be protected. In 2024, humanitarian organizations faced significant funding gaps. We call on donors to provide the $4.2 billion that humanitarians need to support nearly 21 million people inside Sudan next year, and the $1.8 billion needed to support 5 million people, primarily refugees in 7 neighboring countries.
There are some in this chamber who claim that any action by the UN to protect civilians would violate Sudan's sovereignty. Indeed, we heard this argument when the Russian delegation vetoed the Sudan resolution last month. But sovereignty comes with responsibility. The responsibility to protect civilians. It is not a blank check to conduct war crimes. If Sudan's de facto authorities are unwilling and unable to fulfill this paramount responsibility, this council is required to act in accordance with its mandate. I implore us all to not forget the future of Sudan. Over half of the displaced population are children, and hundreds of thousands are missing out on essential early childhood vaccinations. 19 million Sudanese children have not sat in a classroom since the outbreak of this war. And though the postponed national exams are due to take place on December the 28th, many will not be able to take them. We are at risk of losing an entire generation. And the world will not remember the geopolitical excuses. The world will remember the hundreds of thousands of lives lost, the genocide that occurred on our watch, yet again.
Well, meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has unveiled a new package of $230 million in aid for Sudan at the UN Security Council. The aid package includes $200 million designated for humanitarian relief and $30 million aimed at supporting Sudan's transition back to democratic governance. With this latest announcement, total U.S. assistance has surpassed $2.3 billion since the onset of the conflict. Now, this is expected to be Mr. Antony Blinken's final visit to the United Nations as he wraps up his 4-year tenure.
We're announcing an additional roughly $200 million more for food, for shelter, for health care, bringing total U.S. support to more than $2.3 billion since fighting broke out last year. This council must press both warring parties to protect civilians, to stop atrocities, to end the fighting. The ALPS Group has proposed a compliance mechanism, a committee with representation from the SAF, from the RSF, from the international community, to ensure that each side upholds international law and their commitments under the Jeddah Declaration. The United States will use every tool, including further determinations and sanctions, to prevent abuses and hold perpetrators accountable.
Well, here in Nigeria, entrepreneurship took center stage at the 2024 annual celebration and award ceremony of Faith Foundation, where achievements were celebrated in grand style. The event honored outstanding entrepreneurs, partners, and supporters, all united under the theme Breaking Barriers, Building the Future.
It's an evening of jubilation at the 2024 annual celebration and award ceremony of Faith Foundation. This yearly flagship event goes beyond celebrating entrepreneurial spirit and achievements. It also honors the contributions of partners, volunteers, and supporters who have collaborated with the faith community over the past 12 months, as reaffirmed by the Foundation's chairman.
We believe that entrepreneurship continues to be a powerful catalyst for positive change. We believe entrepreneurship is a compelling alternative to employment, and we are committed to empowering entrepreneurs to break barriers and build a brighter future for themselves and for Nigeria, with job creation at the center.
Centered around this year's theme, Breaking Barrier, Building the Future, the keynote address resonates with entrepreneurs in the room.
I want to tell you that the biggest barrier is really our mindset. Many of the entrepreneurs who have changed the world have one thing in common: a can-do, larger-than-life mindset. They have overcome the barrier of the mind. As entrepreneurs, you are not bystanders in the story of Nigeria. You are its authors. While others may point fingers at bad governance, we should turn the mirror to ourselves and ask ourselves, what more can we do?
It's really an occasion to inspire innovation and celebrate milestones. including 233 entrepreneurs graduating from the Faith School across 13 cohorts in 30 states. Plus, over 500,000 participants engaged in Faith Foundation's online courses.
During our annual celebration ceremony, we take a time to reflect on the entrepreneurs who have entrusted us with the entrepreneurial journey, but also recognize entrepreneurs who, through their business growth journey and diligence, are shining examples because of their business growth, but because of also their social impact, the job creation, and making themselves as entrepreneurial pointers, to other aspiring entrepreneurs.
Faith Foundation is a catalyst for enterprise development. The idea is to help businesses to start to grow and to scale their businesses. And the way we do it is to have a program of different courses at different levels for businesses that are starting, businesses that are growing, and businesses that are scaling.
Every year, Faith Foundation brings together entrepreneurs, policymakers, and business leaders to exchange ideas, celebrate success stories, and drive conversations around empowering the next generation of innovators and business trailblazers.
And finally, on the program, let's join hundreds of people in Johannesburg, South Africa, for the Alkebulan Immigrants Global Heritage Festival, bringing together diverse communities and also underscoring the need for unity amongst African countries.
It was a day to celebrate African heritage, unity and diversity. With vibrant dance performances, Africans gathered to honor the Alkebulan Festival, a celebration of unity and cultural diversity. I took the opportunity to ask attendees what they love most about being African.
Oh my God, I love everything about being an African. I love how we do things, how we explore, how we're willing to learn about different cultures, different backgrounds, because we as African, we have different cultures, we have different dances.
Mainly the tapestry of how we as Africans communicate through dance and drama. So being here, looking at different instruments, looking at the skills, I felt like I needed that to take my mind all around out of the busy world that I enjoy every day.
The event featured the Alkebulan Kemetic Experience, a one-stop cultural experience offering a wide range of African clothing. Some attendees emphasized the importance of unity among African nations.
Unity is the password for every success and development. We believe that Africa was united before colonialism, and after colonialism, the unity was missed.
Africans to be united. First of all, each one must have self-love for themselves. Then when you have love for yourself, whomever next you see is a friend. You are friends. You welcome, you chat, and you compare notes.
I think firstly, we have to first learn about each other. We need to have tolerance, Ubuntu, for ourselves. We must remember that we come from the same soil. The fact that we are divided by borders doesn't mean anything. It's a system that was put in place.
African cultures are also renowned for their clan names and their rich traditions of storytelling.
That's who I am.
From the heart of Johannesburg, the Alkebulan Festival was a vivid reminder of the power of unity, heritage, and the shared spirit that binds African nations together. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samos, Channels Television News.
And that's it on the program for today and for the week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olaride. Have a lovely weekend.